The mist clung low over the trail winding through black pine forest, its chill creeping under the skin and sinking deep into the bones. Jess had heard the tales of black pine from her grandfather, stories about shadowy figures and whispers that led those who listened too far. She and her friends, Kevin, Emily, and Sam, had set out for a weekend of adventure. But as they delved deeper, the forest seemed to close in around them, and with each step, an uneasy silence settled in. It was a silence so thick they could feel it watching. Jess looked at her friends as they trudged along the narrow trail, lit only by the fading light. The towering trees stood tall, their dark, sprawling branches stretching across the sky like a canopy trapping them within. "Are we sure this is the right way?" she asked. Kevin, the self-proclaimed guide, didn't respond, his focus on his phone's barely visible GPS screen. Emily nudged Jess. "You know, they say people who go missing hear voices, see things." Jess shivered, but she hid it with a forced laugh. "Yeah, like what?" Emily leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper, like voices calling your name, leading you somewhere. Some say to places where no one ever returns. A gust of wind rustled the leaves, sending shivers down Jess's spine. They pushed on, each step making them more alert to the unnatural silence. It was then they heard it, a faint whisper, indistinct, coming from the forest. "Just come closer." Night had fallen. They huddled around a fire, the shadows dancing menacingly around them. Every rustle seemed to echo through the trees, setting their nerves on edge. They laughed nervously, trying to break the tension, but even Sam, usually the skeptic, looked uneasy. Jess's mind drifted back to the whisper. She hadn't told anyone, but she swore she had heard her name, soft and inviting like a distant lullaby. She brushed it off as imagination, but her unease only grew as she looked into the shadows. The silence around them thickened, and the fire crackled in ominous rhythm. When she glanced over, Kevin's face was blank, his eyes staring into the darkness. "Kevin?" she whispered. He didn't respond, as if in a trance. A chill ran down her spine as his lips barely moved, mumbling something incoherent. She edged closer. "What did you say?" she asked. He looked up suddenly, his face expressionless. "Nothing," he murmured before returning to the fire. That night, Jess could barely sleep, as somewhere in the darkness she could swear something was watching. By morning, the trail they had taken was gone. Every direction they tried looked the same, trees towering endlessly with no sign of the way they'd come. Kevin was visibly frustrated, but his usual confidence was beginning to waver. Emily clutched her backpack, muttering, "We just came to have fun. Why does this feel wrong?" As they wandered, the whispers grew louder, closer, more insistent. Jess tried to ignore them, but they weaved through her mind, strange and otherworldly. "Jess," they called Emily. "Sam, come closer." They finally stopped to rest, but as they sat in the quiet, Jess noticed Kevin was missing. Panicked, they called out for him, their voices swallowed by the dense forest. It was then they heard it, Kevin's voice, faint and distant. "Help me?" They ran in the direction of his voice, but with each step, it seemed to slip further away, leading them deeper into the forest. Finally they stopped, breathless and disoriented. There was no sign of Kevin. Only the forest and the unsettling silence. Night had fallen again, and Jess, Emily, and Sam huddled close, their flashlights barely piercing the thick darkness. Suddenly Emily screamed. On the tree beside her, deep scratches marred the bark, forming strange symbols none of them could understand. They stared in horror as they found similar markings on every tree around them. It was Sam who first noticed the blood smudges beside the symbols. What is this place?" he stammered. The whispers returned, louder and more menacing. Jess's heartbeat quickened. The voice that called her name was now joined by others, a choir of beckoning voices, as though something beyond the darkness was calling for them. The symbols on the trees seemed to pulse in the moonlight, drawing their eyes and making their heads swim. Each symbol carried a strange weight, as though the trees themselves held a dark history. That night, none of them slept, as the forest seemed to close in tighter, trapping them within its endless shadows. The following morning they found themselves alone. Emily was missing. Panic set in as they searched, their voices growing hoarse as they screamed her name. Then faintly they heard her voice whispering, "Help! I can't see." They ran toward her voice, desperation overcoming their fear, but the forest seemed to twist and turn around them. Finally they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a single tree, its bark covered in those same strange symbols, but carved deeper and bleeding sap that looked almost like blood. The voice called to them closer now. "Emily?" Jess whispered, but only silence answered. As she touched the tree, she felt a cold surge pass through her, an eerie sense of something ancient and malevolent lingering within. Sam pulled her back, eyes wide. "This place, it's watching us." They stumbled back into the forest, terror gripping their hearts as the forest seemed to swallow their path once more. Jess and Sam were alone, their nerves frayed. The voices were louder now, angry as though they had failed some test of loyalty. The whispers turned into shrieks, filling their ears and drowning out their thoughts. They ran blindly, stumbling over roots and rocks as something chased them, not seen but felt, like a presence lurking just beyond their vision. As they ran, Jess could see shadowy figures moving in the trees, their forms twisted and unnatural, their eyes glowing in the darkness. She dared not look closer, but the whispers grew louder, filling her mind with images of despair and death. Sam stumbled, and before she could reach him, a shadow seemed to engulf him, dragging him into the darkness. His scream echoed through the trees, leaving her alone, with only the maddening whispers to accompany her. Jess finally collapsed, the weight of the whispers crushing her mind. In her final moments of sanity, she understood. The forest was alive, ancient, and vengeful, feeding on those who dared to enter and never return. She felt her consciousness slipping, becoming one with the shadows, with the whispers. And as she closed her eyes for the last time, the forest fell silent, waiting for the next travelers to step into its embrace.